Digression.
No. I'm not having it.
I mean, is it food we're talking about?
Definitely.
It's very juicy.
Come on.
But I'm just stating facts.
What were we talking about?
Hey guys, salut, I'm Alex and I make food videos on YouTube.
Hi guys, I'm Josh and I edit Alex's videos on YouTube.
Yeah, we are on. So we work a lot together, we talk a lot about food, and spoiler alert, we don't always agree. In fact, we often disagree and we always digress, which I must say makes it very easy on my shoulders because there's no plan, basically.
No, that's kind of the point though, isn't it?
And that's amazing because if we were to digress, nobody can come back at us commenting, clearly this video is going nowhere, because that's the initial plan, man.
Oh, I see what you're saying. So we can have a digression from the digression, and that's...
Yes.
That's...
So last time we had a chat, you mentioned...
It was about comparing ramen to, and I'm going to try and say this correctly, pho?
Pho.
Come on, you tell me, how do we pronounce it?
Well, I'm not Vietnamese, as for once.
Well, I know, but I feel like you might have the edge on pronouncing it.
Yeah, I would say pho.
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 Yeah. See,
It's a very weird, like, vowel. I think it's in between an A, O, pho. To be fair, I've been to Vietnam a while back, and I stayed there for a few months. I was never able to say it right.
I mean, if you don't have a chance of saying it, I'm British, so I've got absolutely no chance of being able to pronounce it. I'll do what all British people do when they're abroad. I'll just say the word again, but louder.
That's great. All right, so the initial claim between ramen and pho. First of all, and I'm sorry to say this, so on the YouTube channel, there's a whole series about ramen noodles. I'm a big fan of ramen noodles, but I'm also a fan of pho. So where do you stand in all this? Did you already pick one side?
I like both, but I definitely come from having more knowledge about ramen.
Okay.
But I guess of late I've been weighing up the two sort of styles and thinking that the broth is maybe what is starting to appeal to me more about pho.
I mean, you don't have an initial preference. That's what I mean. To see if you have a bias already.
I feel like ramen is more diverse, and therefore if someone said you've got to pick one, it would probably be that. But
I would have guessed this in a million years. I knew you would prefer ramen. You know how I know this?
Why?
Well, it's gonna be it's already starting on the wrong foot in this podcast. The reason is, well, you live in the UK. You like to party, do you?
Yeah.
And ramen is a late night food.
Yeah, I knew this was coming. It's for drunk people. That's what you're saying, isn't it?
I would never go down this road, but yeah, well, I mean, it's more intense. I mean, we can get down to details. I love both of them. But I feel like ramen is more like an in-your-face flavor.
Yes.
In-your-face experience.
I agree.
Where pho has more subtlety to it.
I'm going to put something forward and I want to see what you think about this. I feel like, because I love all noodle soups, you know, I'm willing to try any type of noodle soup, and I like a lot.
You're a very tolerant person when it comes to noodle soup.
Absolutely, accepting of all. I'm all about equality when it comes to noodle soups.
Good.
But I feel like I would enjoy pho more if it had ramen noodles in it. So, as in the broth.
That's so wrong. I'm sorry.
Why though?
That's so wrong. Yeah, it's very wrong.
Why? I'd like to see it.
It's just very weird. You would enjoy pho if it were to be ramen.
No, that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that I think the broth experience I enjoy more about pho because it feels more refined. They're not relying as much on fat and salt and those sorts of things. But the rice noodles just don't cut it for me. Then they don't have this. I'm not as into the texture of them as the alkaline noodles that you get in ramen.
So for a rice noodle, I think I agree with you. I feel like rice noodle never have the bounce, the bites, the substance that ramen noodles would have. But is that fair to just try to did you say that you would change the ingredient, or do you say that you're just not that comfortable with that ingredient?
I'm saying that I feel like it's the main thing If I was going to take a bowl of ramen over a bowl of pho, that would be the main reason. Because of the actual noodles themselves. I think in most cases I would prefer the broth from pho.
I agree with this as well. And I feel like you mentioned this earlier. There's more refinement, maybe. I mean, most of the time, it feels like the broth from a pho is just thinner. It's more fragrant as well. It's more delicate, maybe more delicate.
Yes, but it also has a thing of you can really sort of. I feel like you can pull out more of the individual flavors in it, like the star anise, and it tastes more beefy because it's beef as well, isn't it, as opposed to pork, which is what.
Oh yeah, you're right. That is one massive difference between the two soups.
Yeah,
like one of them being basically one of them being always the same. It's hard. Is that comparison even fair when you think of it? We're comparing ramen, basically saying soups, and one soup, and like tomato soup.
Yeah, so this is the thing. This would be the other part of the argument. Because you could, for example, have a Shio ramen or like a Tokyo-style soy ramen, which is way lighter.
Just bragging, yeah.
You know what I mean? That they're much lighter than...
Yes.
It's like, I find ramen places in the UK, they're all just about tonkotsu. And as much as I love that, like maybe once a year, it's just too heavy of something to have all the time. Whereas
so the purposes are different somehow. Like ramen is gonna bring more. Yeah, I agree with this. I wouldn't have ramen every day. It's too heavy. Pho, I think I could have pho for a week. I think I would be rather okay if you were to just not include meat every time, because I feel like with meat, especially with maybe we should describe what pho is.
that would have been a great place to start. Yeah.
Yes, I think it's a great moment for an introduction. Like what's like 10, 12 minutes in. Pho. So a bone broth.
Yes.
That's the start. First of all, it's a Vietnamese soup. I think it's coming from the south originally.
Okay.
But I'm not entirely sure on this. Bone broth, and then it's flavored with the bone broth is flavored with spices. So star anise, cinnamon.
Yeah.
Then these two are the biggest one, I feel.
I actually don't know what there is beyond that, but yes, it has a very...
There could be cloves, there could be like a few spices, but it's not overpowering.
It has almost like Chinese five-spice sort of aroma, I think.
Oh, so it's funny that you mentioned this, because I'm going to have to disagree with this. I think it has more of a four spices vibe going on.
Okay.
The French one.
What is it missing? The fennel?
Yeah, I think so. It doesn't have the tanginess of the five spice. Okay. It has the earthy, hearty. And to be fair, it could be related to the French, basically.
Okay, so I agree with you on that.
Right.
Wait, before we take this digression, though, I'm going to put this down. I'm making a note here for spice, because I need to ask you more about that. But before we do, should we say what ramen is? I know.
Yes. We need to finish on pho, though, because you've got the broth, which is a very clear stock that we mentioned earlier, the bone broth, and then in there you've got rice noodles. Usually you've got bouncy meatballs as well.
Okay. Yeah.
And you've got raw beef, and cooked beef.
Yeah.
So you've got mix of lean and fat. Super thin slices of beef that are floating around, and the raw beef is basically cooking inside. In the broth.
Yeah.
So that would be for pho.
Okay, so I think for a definition for ramen, and without,
it's gonna be hard.
Well, this is the thing, because we are aware of more styles of it. I wonder if there are more styles of pho, but we just maybe in the West don't get as many as we do with ramen. Possibly.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, possibly.
Because even with ramen, I don't feel like we have the variety here that you would get. Well, it, definitely in Japan, but even I feel like America has more diverse ramen than we have in the UK, at least, anyway. But
so what is ramen?
Okay, so I think it's a noodle soup. The defining character is the alkaline noodle, I think, that is at the centre of the dish.
Oh, wow, that's very broad, no?
It is, but I think there's more to it than that. But I think it has to have that. So, in fact, I would say
it's a liquid where noodles are floating or sinking, depending on the type of ramen.
In the same way that pho is dependent on it being rice noodles, ramen has to be the alkaline noodles so that it can stand up to the broth and they don't get too soggy. It's got that springy, chewy, almost gummy-like texture sometimes.
Yes, understood. Okay.
The 5 elements being broth, tare, which is the flavouring agent, and hey, Alex, someone's done a whole series on this if you want to find out more about it.
Yeah.
The flavouring oil, the noodles, and the toppings.
Yeah, I think these 5 elements.
Yes.
5, yes.
Yeah.
I think they do define the ramen properly because it's very hard. I've seen differences between ramen from the north or the south or just from Tokyo, and they don't look like the same dish to me.
No, it's almost, it's a bit like you said, where pho seems to be it's like comparing one type of soup against all the other types of soup.
And also ramen, when you just use the word ramen, many people will just
think of instant ramen.
Exactly, they will think of instant ramen. So when we mention ramen, we mention the properly made Japanese inspired Japanese soup. So
it's funny actually. I've been at parties before when I've been talking to someone and they'll just, what are you into? And if I start talking about food and they're like, what's your favourite food? I'm like, I really like ramen. And they're like,
that's amazing. And the guy says, all right, you're into food very much. I can see that.
He's like, so you're eating 15 pence packets of noodles? How is that being into food? But I do like them as well, though.
Yeah, exactly. That's the problem. I was about to do this. I did that confession already. But I think I love these. They're so convenient. And I used to, as all students, I used to rely on them. They were my staple food.
Go-to.
I felt like I was some kind of a gourmet, a foodie, just because I had different type of instant ramen in my cupboard.
Once you start buying the Nissin, then you're really moving up the ranks.
Exactly. When you go Japanese, you're like an orthodox when it comes to ramen. I did that. My experience with pho, the best one I had, even though I went to Vietnam, the best one I had was in Paris a while back. Rainy day, super cold on a Sunday, woke up very late. And I went to a place that was run by a son and his mom in like an Asian district in Paris. And they come from the south of Vietnam. And they served me a big, warm, steaming hot bowl of pho.
Okay.
And when I tasted it, I felt better, first of all. I felt better. Because it has this ability, a bit like chicken noodle soup.
Yeah.
It's soothing without being too fatty. Where I can see that ramen does this to you. It's just like a plaster.
It doesn't solve. I see what you're saying. It doesn't solve the problem.
Did I just offended like every ramen lover, including myself? No, but ramen is just like it's like a burger basically. You feel good immediately, but it's not soothing who you are. It's not helping you as a human being. I don't know.
I know what you're saying. Like pho, for starters, it's a clean, clear broth. Like you said, it's less fatty, less salty, and it's way more reminiscent of chicken noodle soup that you would have when you were ill as a kid, sort of thing.
It's a bit like between tea and coffee. Ramen would be coffee to me, and pho would be tea. Tea is good. Tea is going to be less of a slap in the face in terms of flavors. It's going to wake you up a bit less, yes, but also, that over time, you won't have like jiggers. You won't be like
you mean the jitters.
That is something like you guys
jittery.
are getting into it. So whenever I'm missing a word, I'm always asking it with a question mark at the end. So the jitters.
Yes. Yeah. You're saying there's a ramen version of the jitters, which is basically like the sort of the meat sweats, as we might say.
It did happen to me, to be fair. With ramen, with super heavy tonkotsu ramen,
you have to have a sleep
was a bit
afterwards.
hectic afterwards. Yeah. A bit out of my mind afterwards.
Well, maybe this is the thing. We perhaps should have picked a style of ramen to go up head to head with pho, rather than every variety
Let's take
of ramen.
one then. Let's take one. Something fair like tonkotsu.
I think maybe tonkotsu, because outside of Japan, that seems to be the most well-known style of ramen.
Okay.
I would say.
Okay.
But it is also the heaviest.
I was joking, to be honest, because when I said tonkotsu, I thought you would say, "All right, that is unfair," and you said yes. Why
it is
would you
unfair,
agree to compare a fatty soup against a lean soup?
I don't know.
I would compare Shio ramen to because Shio ramen. So, do you want to explain what Shio ramen is? I think it's mostly based out of chicken stock initially.
I think so. It's probably they think it's the style of ramen that is most similar to its Chinese origin. So a chicken bone based broth. It's clear, so it's not fatty like a tonkotsu. And the main sort of flavouring agent is salt.
Yeah, Shio ramen feels like a more fair comparison between the two. I think.
Yeah.
So let's compare them fairly.
Okay.
Broth.
Yes.
I think Shio ramen is lacking the subtlety of the spice. It's hard to tell. It depends also on your personal preferences. If you're the type of person who enjoy just the beauty of a properly made chicken stock, then Shio ramen is the one to go.
Yeah.
But if you think that spices, and that's very interesting, that's something I've been working on super recently. But if you think spices can help provide a bit of support in a stock without overpowering it, and I'm one of these persons. I feel like the best use of spices, and probably because I was raised here in France, but is when you can't exactly tell what spice you added to it. Not like it's a mess, but more like it's so subtle that it's just giving the dish some support, and it's not taking center stage. And I feel like pho broth is achieving that, even though you can probably tell that there's cinnamon and star anise.
Yes, but it's not as if when you first start eating it, it's not necessarily the first thing that comes to mind. I still think the beef flavour is prominent, but it's more of a back note, I think, the spice.
What about rice noodles? I have to agree with you. I feel like rice noodles, they are in pace with the thinness of the broth, of the pho broth, which is okay. They never deliver the same amount of pleasure that ramen noodles do.
They're just not as slurpable, and they don't have the
they're no match.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think so. But something I would say, actually, because you keep saying about a pho broth being quite thin, I think it kind of depends at what point you are in eating the dish, because I've always found it's almost, in place of there being lots of fat in it, it's quite gelatinous. I think because it's beef, and maybe there's more sort of gelatin in it.
Yes.
But I feel like as it cools, it does seem to get thicker.
Yeah, but they serve it to you steaming hot. How long do you take to eat that soup? How long does it take you? Does it take you like 30 minutes?
No. But I mean, even over the course of 10 minutes, I do feel like
Oh, wow. Okay. You feel like the thickness is increasing over time?
Yeah, slightly. But what I'm saying is, when you keep saying that it's very thin, yes, it is. But also, I feel like they really work on getting the gelatin content into the soup for pho, and I think part of that is the mouthfeel of the broth, more so than you would have, for example, in a chicken stock. So I feel like actually a Shio ramen would possibly be thinner in terms of mouthfeel than a pho.
You're right. I think this is quite accurate on this. This is something I really enjoy in food discussions.
What's that?
I love bringing a few points to the game, to the party, and then if I'm wrong, I love being wrong for a reason. And I think you're very right on this. I think with beef and beef stock, very right. It's always just a touch thicker. It has a bit more bite, a bit more body than just any chicken stock.
Yeah.
That being said, I said that, I think, and I'm not going back. I said that because I think we were comparing overall ramen and pho.
Yes.
But in this case, possibly, not entirely sure, but possibly, because also there's something you have forgotten right there.
Go on then.
In Shio ramen, they also use fat as a base.
Yes.
That ladle of fat.
But what I would say is that usually in Shio, as opposed to tonkatsu or something like that, the fat is not incorporated. It kind of floats as
it's floating
particles on the top, you know.
Yeah, understood.
Whereas with the pho broth, it's the sort of gelatin content in it is incorporated into the soup itself.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, there are a few droplets of oil at the top of the pho, but it's anecdotal.
Yes.
I would say.
Yeah. It's not a key player in the dish.
And usually it's quite enjoyable. It's not. It's not part of it. You don't even notice them. But for Shio ramen, definitely part of them, and yet not being too much incorporated in there. In terms of freshness now.
I pho all the way in terms of freshness, and not
just because something we did not mention earlier, like Thai basil on top of it, or long. How do you call this?
Bean sprouts.
They are. Say again.
Bean sprouts.
Nah.
What were you
how do
say?
you call this? Bean sprouts? How do you call this? Noodles? No, I was referring to something way more specific.
Go on,
my friend. I was talking about long coriander.
Wow. Okay. Go on.
It's called asa fetida, I think.
Asafoetida.
I think so.
Okay.
The long one.
Long one. I've never seen it in its actual vegetable form, but I can get asafoetida powder that you would use for Indian
right one,
cooking.
Let me just check.
Asafoetida is very stinky. It's got a sort of onion and garlicky sort of vibe.
No, it might not be this one. I might just be. So, in French we call this long coriander. I think Mexican people call this culantro, I think. So it's like it looks like it's very odd. It looks nothing like coriander.
Okay.
But it's way deeper than coriander. Where coriander, it has that fresh. For some people, it's a bit soapy, but it only stays at the top of flavors. It's just like that tangy, fresh, ephemerous flavor. Where for long coriander, it's
so I've just had a quick Google for it now, and it says the Latin name is Eryngium foetidum. So I can see why you thought it was asafoetida, because it's got that same thing in it.
I got confused. Yes, and the name that's written on Wikipedia is culantro.
I don't think I've ever had this.
It's mind-blowing.
Mexican coriander is another name for it. So
when you mix this stuff, and this stuff is really special. It's like it almost is like an acquired taste. You taste it, something's a bit off, and then you get used to it and you start liking it, and then you can't have a bowl of pho without this stuff no more.
Wow. Well, I feel like my pho experience is not complete then in that case.
Yeah.
And so I don't think I've ever had this.
Oh man, that's amazing. And usually they tend to serve a bit of mint or a bit of this stuff or a bit of Thai basil, a few bean sprouts as well on the side, and some lemon. A friend of mine, so he comes from the south of Vietnam, and he told me every time he goes back to Vietnam, he sees his mom, and his mom making a bowl of pho in the style of Saigon.
Okay.
So super south. And he told me her mom adds, it's a bit weird, but she adds a laid egg. Is that the right word?
Maybe
an egg with the beginning of a chicken inside.
Okay, I've never had one of those, but I've seen I don't even know if there is a word in English for that.
Oh wow, that I'm not sure I would be ready for this.
No, no, I don't think so. I don't know. I mean, you know, I eat chicken, so it seems a bit hypocritical that I wouldn't do this. But yeah, I just don't see the appeal in that.
But he told me basically that her mom makes it very personal, and I feel like there's room for interpretation. That's probably something these two dishes share. That it depends on, even for Shio ramen, even for something as specific as one type of ramen, there must be like at least I don't know, every household. Maybe I'm just mistaking here. Maybe ramen is that might be the difference between the two.
Okay, what?
Great, almost at the end of the podcast.
Well, that's the
point. Maybe
point.
Ramen is not something you make at home, and maybe pho is something you make at home.
Okay.
What do you think? It might be absolutely wrong as well.
It could be absolutely wrong, but I'm willing to run with it. I think I don't really, other than me and you, because we're lunatics, I don't really know anyone else that actually makes ramen at home.
No one. What about pho?
Well, I don't know anyone that does that either, but possibly there's a lot of knowledge that we are missing on this. We're just kind of discussing what we know about the subject. I would love to know from somebody, is pho something that people cook at home? Like, is that the distinction? That most of the ramen is a street food, whereas pho is something that is cooked at home?
I feel like I might have led us into a trap, because I feel like I never cooked pho myself.
Well, me neither. But I have cooked ramen.
And the problem is that I have cooked ramen as well.
Yeah, exactly. But
so
like I said, I don't think that we are a good cross-section of what normally happens in Asia.
You don't think we are representative?
No, somehow. I'm not quite sure why.
Well, I felt like I was a bit Japanese and a bit Vietnamese somehow, deep inside.
Well, you might have more of a claim to the Vietnamese connection. Actually, I wanted to pick this back up with you.
Oh, wow. I wouldn't dare saying you have some Indian connection. Would I say that to you?
I think a little bit, yeah. Why? No, because British cuisine, I suppose, there's a lot of Indian food in Britain.
Yeah, you're
more
right.
so than other countries
in
Europe.
Right.
This is what I was going to ask you. What is pot of pho, and is it an influence or related in some way to pho? And I may have said both of those dishes wrong.
I think you said both of them wrong.
Okay, good.
I don't think so. No, I'm just being mean at the moment. They are definitely connected. I've always thought that Vietnamese people during the time of the French colony have just improved every dish we own.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, for sure. Because when you take a French dish, usually you get flavors. You can like it or dislike it, but usually you get something intense in terms of flavor. You get like rich, deep notes. I mean, in my eyes at least, it's always lacking something. A bit of kick, a bit of freshness. A bit of,
okay.
Yeah, a little slap, a little tickle.
So
and usually, like Vietnamese people have taken, for example, pot au feu. I think it comes initially from the French, and then it's pot au feu, and then pho might be an adaptation. I'm not entirely sure, but I think it would make much sense, because they just took the exact same base and they brought it to the next level by just adding the right spice, not too much, but just the right spice, a few herbs, a squeeze of lime or a squeeze of lemon in the end. Just it feels so bright.
Yeah.
The experience of a pho now is just like that hearty, rich, deep experience from France, from old-fashioned, dusty France, and then the kick, like from Vietnamese food, and I've seen that on different dishes, like for example, the banh mi sandwich. The banh mi sandwich, it's for another podcast, but it clearly has followed the same path.
As in, it originates with very traditional French ingredients like the baguette and pâté, but they're using fresh herbs and more zingy sort of sour maybe, or fresh notes that kind of...
Well, that's amazing. Yes, I agree with you. Like zingy, I actually thought it was a made-up word from me, but it actually is a word, zingy.
Yeah.
It's like tangy?
Yeah, it's kind of like tangy, but zingy is more like... a lemon is sort of zingy. I don't know.
What's zingy in the end?
It just means sort of a bright, fresh. Yeah. I guess I would use zingy in terms of talking about flavors that are like citrus or coriander or higher sort of fresh notes.
You're going to hear that word a lot in the next edit that you're going to make, because recently I've been recording loads of zingy on camera.
Okay. Zingy. I'm going to do a sequence of you just saying the word zingy.
So how do we end this podcast? Let's pick a winner between Shio Ramen and Pho. We count to 3, and at 3 we both shout or just say what we think should be the winner.
Okay. Yeah.
So 1, 2, 3.
Pho. Yeah, I agree.
Damn it! We agreed. It's been a real pleasure to have this chat with you, Joshua, and I'm hoping you guys enjoyed listening to it. Let's catch you in the next one then.
Amazing. I'll see you then.
See you, man.
All right. Bye bye.